Hello again, everybody. Thanks for clicking on my video. So if you've watched my other videos, you know that I'm still brand new to YouTube and I'm still trying to figure it out. I just like researching true crimes and I like learning about the people, how their brains work, all the different things like why do they do the things they do, what drives them to the point of murdering somebody, and why do they do it. I like to ask questions. I like to speculate about why someone may have done the things they did, or the things that they are alleged to have done. So everything I'm going to say is my opinion only. I've researched this and I've learned all of this online, which is available to anybody. I've taken this and I've put it together the way that I understand it. I encourage you to search out all the facts and learn everything directly for yourself if you want to. Please don't take my way of interpreting the stories as the exact way the things have happened. I've put everything into my words. Click that like button for me. It only takes a couple seconds and it really does help as far as YouTube is concerned. It's the main way that they put you out into the algorithm, get your videos out there. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel. That way you can watch along as I learn how to make videos not suck. And I'll also be doing, as I'm telling the stories of different things, I'll be showing my work, me doing tattoos and different kinds of art. I'll do more as time goes on and I get more time to make some videos. That way, while the talking is playing, you'll be able to watch something instead of just staring at me sitting here talking to the camera. I'm only human, so I may get a thing or two wrong. Which, if it does happen, just let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to fix it or to edit it out if it needs to be. I've done my best to get all the facts correct. I try to go through and everything that I read, I try to find it somewhere else that says the same thing. If it doesn't say the same thing, then I'll just omit it from the story that I'm putting together. That way I can make sure to try to have all the facts correct in the order that things happened. So as far as this case, I'm going to warn you up front, this is a crazy case with a lot of crazy allegations. It has to do with infant deaths and the alleged attempted murder of babies. So if that is triggering to you in any way, please don't watch. I don't want to cause anybody undue stress or anxiety. It has to do with a neonatal nurse named Lucy Letby. She worked at the Countess of Chester hospital over in the UK. She is accused of allegedly murdering multiple babies and allegedly attempting to murder even more. These are all allegations. Everything is alleged, and Lucy has not been found guilty of any of the crimes she is accused of committing. She is currently on trial in Manchester, so the jury will be the one to decide her fate. Okay, so Lucy is from Hereford, England. Currently she is facing 22 charges altogether. 7 of them are for murder, and 15 are for attempted murder. At first there was only 10 attempted murder charges, but after trial started in October, the court had made some amendments and they added another 5 counts of attempted murder for the alleged repeat attempts on some of the babies. So first I'll go through the story, and then I'll tell you about the babies one by one, and after that I'll go through and I'll give you my opinions about what I think after learning all of this through court notes and articles and everything. So Lucy was born in 1990. That would make her 32 years old right now. She was born in Hereford, England. Her parents are John and Susan Letby. Not very much is known about them, and not much is known about Lucy's personal life for that matter. I couldn't find anything about her childhood except a quote from a neighbor that knew her as a child. She's never been married. She's never had any children of her own. I've read that she loved all the normal things in life. The things like traveling, reading, movies. She liked going out for drinks with friends. It's all the stuff most of us enjoy doing with our lives. She was just a normal person, it sounded like. She had no active social media accounts that I could find right now, but since the court mentioned it multiple times, that Lucy would search for the parents of the babies, I'm sure after all the allegations, either Facebook took down her page or she did it to avoid all the hate and accusations. I read somewhere in one article that she prefers to stay out of the limelight and she doesn't like drawing attention to herself. Lucy had studied for her nursing degree at the University of Chester. She graduated in 2011. After that, she went on to work at Liverpool's Women's Hospital. She wanted to get more training under her belt before moving to Countess of Chester. She had a squeaky clean record with the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and she was even their poster child for a campaign that raised nearly $3.5 million. All of her colleagues said they knew her to be a dedicated professional. A friend of hers said Lucy was doing the job she dreamed of doing and appeared nothing but dedicated and professional. She said you couldn't imagine Lucy hurting a fly, let alone a defenseless baby. Lucy's loved ones said she was very involved with charitable causes, and she's just a fun, sweet, and geeky young woman. The neighbor that knew her as a child described her as being as sweet as anything, that she seemed like a lovely woman, and everything you heard about her was always positive. One of her other friends described her simply as an amazing person. Lucy was originally arrested in 2018. She made bail, and a year later, in 2019, she was arrested again. She made bail again that time, and again a year later, in November of 2020, for a third and final time, she was arrested. We'll get into that later in the story, though. So now I'm going to go into the story of how all this came to be. The Countess of Chester was just a normal hospital. It was a busy general hospital, like many others in the UK. However, Chester wasn't like the other ones, starting in June 2015 through June 2016. Prior to 2015, the statistics for the mortality rate of babies in the neonatal unit was comparable to that of other similar units. But starting in June 2015, there was a vast increase of the number of babies that were dying or suddenly having catastrophic collapses. This caught the attention of the hospital's consultants, who became concerned that babies had started to deteriorate and die unexpectedly. They had noted that the babies who did collapse did not respond appropriately to treatments and resuscitation efforts that were given in a timely manner, and how some of the babies that suddenly took a dramatic turn would suddenly turn around and make a sudden and dramatic recovery. Consultants at the hospital started looking for a way to explain these changes and all these deaths. They looked for any way they could to explain what was happening to the babies, and why all of a sudden there was a vast increase of deaths and sudden deteriorations. But according to medical experts, nothing that would normally be to blame for this happening was the cause. After searching and, in their opinion, failing to find a reason for this, they did start to notice there was one common denominator with all the incidences. They noticed Lucy Letby. There was a very limited number of people it could have been, because neonatal units are usually heavily restricted and they're monitored closely. But they noticed Lucy Letby was on duty for each of the incidences, and she was either helping directly with the care of, or was in the room when all these things happened. The hospital needed to find answers, and they needed to get to the bottom of this, so the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health was contacted. If what I could find is correct, this would have been in the second half of 2016, and at this time a very lengthy and in-depth investigation took place. The investigators met with independent pediatricians and other specialists to review cases that happened at the Chester Neonatal. In 2016, the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health released reports saying the staffing in the pediatric unit was far from adequate. They came up with 24 ways the hospital could improve on their care for infants. Things like poor decision making, the lack of senior doctors, and then the reluctance of staff to get advice from other more knowledgeable people were just some of the concerns mentioned in the report. The increase of infant deaths in 2015 forced the hospital to make changes and forced them to stop caring for babies younger than 32 weeks. They had to transfer all babies younger than that out of their care, because they had to transfer them out because at the hospital, babies were suffering heart and lung failures at alarming rates, and they were also proving impossible to resuscitate when doctors intervened quickly and medicine was given. Not in every case, but some of the babies should have responded to the life-saving efforts, but they didn't, which most of the doctors found to be pretty bizarre. Some of the babies that had died were showing unusual discolorations on their legs and arms after death. The babies were described as being like a pale white color with purple blotches that had like blue and pink tints to them. It was like a rash-like rash-like discolorations, basically. Since none of the experts could ascertain what was going on, they contacted the police in May 2017 for another investigation. The consultants were growing more and more suspicious of Lucy during this time because of her close proximity and her interactions with the babies. The consultants knew that making these allegations towards one of their own was kind of a big deal. It was just about as serious as it gets. But really they had no choice. They had to suspend her. She was brought back later, and she was given an administrative role where she couldn't interact with any patients. In 2018, after a year of investigating, the police thought they figured something out, and they started to focus on Lucy. I could not find the exact evidence or the exact reason police decided to focus on her, or what led them to suspecting her at all. But I did read in one article that she had previously gone on vacation with her parents before the suspension, and while she was away from the neonatal unit, the deaths and catastrophic collapses slowed down to normal rates. At this time, on July 3rd, 2018, police had decided to arrest her on suspicion of the alleged deaths and the alleged attempted murders. Detective Paul Hughes put out a press release addressing the ongoing investigation into the hospital.
It's been a highly sensitive and complicated investigation, and as such we have consulted with specialists who continue to work alongside the investigative team. Also, we have spoken to and interviewed a large number of staff from the Countess of Chester Hospital and beyond. As a result of our inquiries so far, we have today arrested a healthcare professional. She was arrested this morning on suspicion of the murder of 8 babies and the attempted murder of a further 6, and currently remains in custody. It's really important to remember that there's still a long way to go in this inquiry, and a lot of work before we're able to fully ascertain exactly what happened to these 32 babies subject to this investigation, and we are committed to a thorough investigative process. This arrest this morning will obviously be of huge impact to parents and families, and it's important to remember that they are at the heart of this inquiry. All the parents are being supported by specially trained officers and have been informed of our actions so far. I am further aware of the impact this investigation will have on the members of the public and the staff and patients of the Countess of Chester Hospital. I am unable to offer any further information in relation to this investigation at this time, but will do so as soon as possible. If anybody can offer any information in relation to this investigation, then please don't hesitate to get in contact with us.
When she was arrested, police executed a search warrant on her home. They searched everything looking for evidence. They even dug up her gardens to look for human remains. They never found any. She was released on bail in July 2018. Then on June 10th, a year later in 2019, she was arrested again in relation to the original counts, as well as allegedly a further 3 more attempted murders. During this arrest, police informed her they thought she was connected to more infant deaths than they previously thought. Lucy made bail again later in June 2019. Then over a year later, on November 11th, 2020, she was arrested for a 3rd and final time. It's at this time law enforcement officially charged Lucy with murder. She appeared at Warrington Magistrates Court on November 12th. She appeared by video link from Peterborough to face all charges, which all stem from June 2015 through June 2016. Lucy only spoke to confirm she could hear the proceedings from Liverpool. The trial is being held at Manchester Crown Court and is expected to last 6 months. The names of the babies that Lucy allegedly murdered are Kemlyn Bennett, Joseph Johnson, Elise McNall, Barney G., Daisy Parkin, Maddie Freed, Joseph Gedler, and Eli Gedler. Remember, these are all alleged. They have not proven that Lucy harmed these babies. The 10 other babies were made up of 5 girls and 5 boys. They cannot be named for legal reasons. The court has labeled the babies with letters from the alphabet. This was to keep the families private so no one would try to contact them. So the court is going to refer to all the babies, they're going to refer to it like, they're going to call it Child A, Child B, Child C, etc., etc. This is going to be strictly my own opinion right now. I think they could have given them all fake names or come up with a better way so it wasn't so confusing and it was easier to keep track throughout the proceedings. This is going to take 6 months, and they're going to have to remember each individual baby by letter for this whole time. I suppose the reason they are doing it this way is so that it makes them all equal, or maybe to kind of depersonalize the whole situation, which some people may find wrong to do, being that they are infants, but in the interest of justice and being as fair as possible to both sides, I guess that could make sense. Alright, so we got to remember this was a neonatal unit. That means that these were the sick and poorly babies that needed a little bit of help and a little bit of TLC to help get them to the point where they were strong enough and healthy enough to go home on their own. Alright, now we're going to start with the cases of the babies. Please remember everything right now is alleged. I know I've said it a lot, but I want to make sure anybody who's listening knows that this is not confirmed. Lucy has not been found guilty, and she is still on trial right now. So with that being said, all the articles I've read seem like it's from the side of the prosecution. It's a lot of people giving their opinion about what happened. There's a few things that Lucy said personally, like from text messages or police interviews, but the vast majority of the details about the deaths and the alleged attempted murders do not come from Lucy's recollection of events. They come from nurses, doctors, and other medical experts that reviewed the cases after the fact. So please keep that in mind, that if this sounds like it's one-sided against Lucy, it's because almost everything out there about this case seems to be one-sided against her. So we're going to start with the twins, Child A and Child B. They were born by C-section at 31 weeks on June 7th, 2015. Child A was a baby boy. He was admitted to the neonatal ward, but was in good condition and was breathing fine without extra support. About an hour after Lucy started her shift, she called a doctor to the baby's incubator. The baby wasn't breathing at this time, and the doctor noticed the baby had a weird discoloration. Resuscitation efforts were attempted, but they didn't work on the little guy, and he was pronounced dead June 8th at 8:58 p.m. It is alleged that the baby had air injected directly into his bloodstream through one of the tubes already connected, and that had caused him to collapse. Child B was Child A's twin sister. She did require some extra help at birth, but she recovered quickly and was soon in stable condition. Shortly before midnight, it was noted her breathing tube had become dislodged and the nasal prongs weren't in the right spot, and her blood oxygen levels fell. At 12:30 on June 9th, she had turned blue in color and was not breathing. An on-call register was called and resuscitated the baby, and once again she recovered quickly. It is alleged that some sort of sabotage had taken place, possibly an injection of air. This baby did make a full recovery, and she suffered no adverse consequences, and she was released about a month later. Next is Child C, a baby boy. He was born in June 2015. He was born premature at 30 weeks. Even though he was about a month early, he was in good, stable condition. He was responding well to treatment, and there was no big concerns. It is alleged that air was injected into his body as well. This time it's alleged that air was injected into his stomach, not his bloodstream, which caused complications and caused the baby to not be able to breathe, and she suffered cardiac arrest. Lucy was looking after another baby at this time, but is said to have been the only one in the room at the time of the collapse. Child D, a baby girl, had some issues at birth. She had more issues than the other ones so far. At birth, she had become pale and floppy, but after treatment was given, she was recovering well and seemed to be on the mend until she suddenly deteriorated and collapsed 3 separate times. On the third collapse, she could not be revived. On June 22nd, she passed away. It is alleged that the baby had an injection of air into her bloodstream as well. After the death of this baby is when Lucy started searching for the parents on Facebook. Child E and F were twins that were born premature, and Lucy was their designated nurse. Mom was an inpatient at the hospital when she decided to visit her sons in the neonatal unit one night. When she walked in on August 3rd, 2015, the mom had noticed her baby was in acute distress and was bleeding from the mouth. Lucy told her this was from a tube and that a doctor would be in to check on everything soon. She then urged her to return to her room and that the mom could trust her because she's a nurse. The baby went on to suffer significant blood loss later in the evening and had passed in the early hours of August 4th. It was alleged Lucy killed baby E by injecting him with air. The following day, August 5th, prosecution alleges Lucy tried to overdose baby F, the twin of child E, with insulin. She started him on a TPN bag and is accused of allegedly trying to poison him. It's alleged that no other baby on the unit was prescribed insulin, so there's no chance it was a mistake or negligence. Notes say that Lucy had hung the bag that contained the insulin. Luckily, the baby's nutrients bag was replaced and he survived. It's alleged Lucy took a deep interest in the parents and performed multiple searches for them on Facebook following the death of child E. Baby G was born prematurely at 23 weeks. She was born in a different hospital, weighing only 1 pound 2 ounces, and she was transferred to the Countess. September 6th was a special day as it marked the 100th day since she was born. It's alleged the following day is when Lucy fed the infant an excess amount of milk through a feeding tube, and alleged that she may have also tried to inject air. The baby had vomited off her bed onto a chair and the floor and suffered a collapse and was not breathing. She was resuscitated and transferred back to the hospital she was born at. After that, she was moved back to the Countess on September 16th. It's alleged on September 21st, again Lucy fed her an excessive amount of milk, and the baby had vomited 2 more times. Later in the afternoon, Lucy was calling for help, and another nurse came to assist. The other nurse says the baby's monitor had been switched off and the baby was struggling to breathe. They were able to stabilize the baby, and later tests performed show that the baby had suffered irreversible brain damage as a result of the first 2 episodes. Child H. I could not find a lot about this baby or the allegations against Lucy, but what I could find said Lucy is alleged to have tried to kill the baby on 2 consecutive nights. The baby had suffered 2 profound collapses and required adrenaline and resuscitation. Experts never could identify what exactly happened with this baby. She was transferred to a different hospital where she made a dramatic recovery and continued improvements. Child I. It is alleged there was 3 attempts to harm the baby girl in October of 2015 before the child succumbed to her injuries after resuscitation efforts failed and she passed away on October 23rd. She was born premature and very small. She had fought for 2 months and was doing well, and then it's alleged Lucy came along and harmed her. She is accused of first trying to inject the baby with air, but the baby was resilient. During the second collapse, another nurse said she had walked into the room where the baby girl was, and Lucy was just standing there and commented that the infant looked pale until the designated nurse of the baby turned on the light and noticed she wasn't breathing. On the alleged 3rd attempt, the baby was found to have excess air in her stomach, causing her difficulty breathing. A medical expert determined the cause of death to be consistent with the deliberate injection of air into the baby's stomach through a nasal tube. After the death, the mom was given the chance to bathe her baby one last time. While doing so, Lucy came in and was all smiles and talking about how she was with the baby at its first bath and how the baby loved it so much. Afterwards, Lucy had sent the parents a sympathy card. She took a picture of this card and she kept it on her phone, and she also made multiple searches for the parents on Facebook. Child J was a baby girl. She was born premature at 32 weeks. She had an operation for a bowel disorder, and she handled it well and was in stable condition. On the overnight shift from November 26th to 27th, she suffered a sudden catastrophic collapse. Records show Lucy was one of 6 nurses working that night. The baby had suffered 2 serious breathing issues and was moved to a high dependency room. At about 7 a.m. on the 27th, her breathing dropped so low that the machines couldn't get a reading, and the baby had a seizure. At 7:20 a.m., it is alleged Lucy gave the baby an injection of glucose. Then moments later, the baby collapsed again and required resuscitation. An independent medical examiner that reviewed the case said it was concerning how the baby collapsed. some form of obstruction with the baby's airways and consistent with that of being smothered. In February 2016, it is alleged that Lucy tried to murder child K, another baby girl, by deliberately dislodging its breathing tube. Dr. Ravi Jairam, a pediatric consultant, had become aware that Lucy was alone with the baby and became concerned because there were starting to be a lot of coincidences of unexplained things happening when Lucy was around the babies. So the doctor decided to check on the baby. When he walked in, he saw Lucy was alone in the room, and she was standing over the baby's incubator. It could see on the monitor that the oxygen levels had dropped and that the child was not breathing. The alarm should have been sounding, but it wasn't. He found the breathing tube was not positioned properly, and the baby could not breathe because of it. The doctor fixed it, and the baby started doing better. Later that same morning, Lucy was with the baby again and was calling for help this time. This time, the baby's breathing tube had slipped too far down her throat. The baby was transferred to a different hospital, but was still doing pretty bad, and she ended up passing away 2 days later. Lucy is not being charged with the murder. When Lucy allegedly attacked the next children, she was only supposed to be working day shift because higher-ups at the hospital were growing concerned about the correlation between when she worked at night and the deaths of the babies. On April 9, 2016, was the alleged attempts on child L and child M. They were also twins. It is alleged on April 9, 2016, Lucy had given child L an unauthorized dose of insulin into their system, and while she was doing this, Lucy turned her attention to child M and allegedly injected air into his circulation. Prosecution says Lucy agreed the insulin could not have been given accidentally, but that she was not responsible. Her explanation was that it had to have been in one of the bags he was receiving already. Child M had a near-death experience when suddenly, without warning, his breathing dropped dangerously low. After that, he went on to improve overnight and made a speedy recovery. During the execution of a search warrant, it is found Lucy had detailed what happened with these babies in her diary, and she took home the medical records of the babies. Child N was born at 34 weeks, so it was born in full gestation. They were born June of 2016, and his condition was described as excellent, but in his records he did have a blood disorder that requires monitoring. It's alleged that child N was deliberately harmed, and Lucy allegedly attempted to murder him by shoving a nasogastric tube down his throat. This caused the baby to scream. Prosecution alleged that Lucy used the cover of his blood disorder, a disorder in which bleeding starts for no reason, as a way to attack this baby. It's alleged that the day after the baby was born, he suffered a sudden lowering of his blood oxygen levels to life-threatening levels. He made a recovery, and 12 days later, it's alleged Lucy made 2 more attempts on his life. The baby was almost ready to go home when Lucy entered the room. When a different nurse had her back turned, Lucy told her that the baby had lost oxygen, and Lucy had started helping with breathing. While attempts were being made to save the young boy, doctors could not see down his throat due to it being so swollen and covered in fresh blood. They had to call in a team of specialists. They were able to get him back to stable condition. Then later that day, there was another collapse. His blood oxygen fell to life-threatening levels again, and they attempted to insert a tube, and again there was fresh blood in his throat. They said the baby had experienced a sudden deterioration, which was consistent with some kind of inflicted injury that caused severe pain, such as someone trying to shove the tube down his throat, which caused severe distress and destabilized him. It has been said that he was screaming in pain for up to 30 minutes. A doctor said that he had never heard a neonatal scream like that. This baby was transferred to a different hospital in Liverpool and made a full recovery. Children O, P, and Q were triplets. They were born in June 2016. Child O was in stable condition up until the afternoon of June 23rd when he suffered a remarkable deterioration. A postmortem exam showed unclotted blood in his body from a liver injury. Medical experts allege that he had an excess of air injected into the bloodstream through his nose tube. Lucy is alleged to have murdered Child O's brother the next day. Child P had suffered an acute deterioration, and preparations were being made to move him to a different hospital. Doctors were optimistic about his recovery when all of a sudden Lucy came in and said something to the effect of, "He's not leaving here alive, is he?" Shortly after this, Child P had another collapse and died. Independent experts tasked with reviewing the case suggest the most likely cause would be that air was injected into his stomach, which caused him to stop breathing and die. After Child P's death, Lucy spent time with the parents. She ended up putting the two babies that had passed away together on a bed and was taking photos of them. I'm assuming that she did this for the parents. The final alleged incident was the alleged attempted murder of Child Q, the third of the triplets. This was the day after she allegedly killed Child P. The Crown alleges that this time, as well as injecting air into the baby's system, she also injected some kind of clear fluid, probably water or saline, into his stomach in a bid to murder him. The baby was then transferred to a different hospital where he went to make a rapid recovery. The prosecution said he was safe now that he was out of the orbit of Lucy Letby. So that's it for the babies. Now I'll give you my idea of what might be going on here. This is 100% speculation. I have no evidence of any of this. After reading through weeks and weeks worth of court records and looking into each case, this is just going to be what I think, my opinion of the whole thing as a whole. At the beginning, when I was just getting my info from different online news places, my opinion was that she was guilty, and I made a video where I did not hide the fact I thought she was guilty. I'm going to go ahead and trim that video down to almost nothing because what I did was wrong. I should have reserved my opinions until I received more of the facts. I should have known better than to accept the narrative from the mainstream media, but I read all the articles and that's what happened. I messed that one up, and I deeply apologize to Lucy and her family. I doubt they'll ever see this, but I'm still going to apologize. She may still end up being found guilty by the jury, and if she is, then so be it. I'll still feel like an ass for saying some of the things I did. So with that being said, since the beginning of the trial, the court has gone through and detailed each child in depth as to what was going on with them at birth, after birth, and while they were in the neonatal unit. We got detailed text from Lucy in her own words and learned in detail the situation of each child before and after death. So here we go. I think there could have been a few things going on here. The first and easiest explanation would be that Lucy is just a complete sociopath. That she has no emotion and she does not care one bit about human life. Now, I really don't think that this is the case. I do not believe that Lucy feels that way. Not after a lot of the things I've read about the cases going on here and the things that Lucy has said and the way that she's acted. I do not believe she is a cold-blooded killer. Another thing I was thinking was she had some sort of hero complex. Like she would do things to the babies to take them all the way to the brink of death and then bring them back so that way she would be praised by the parents and they would be eternally grateful to her. She would inject them with air to the point that they started having issues and collapsed, but she wouldn't do it so much so that she could not bring them back to being stable and healthy. Then when the parents found out, she would be the hero and they would praise her and loved her for saving their babies' lives. It's alleged that she did this with a lot of babies. I think it's 17 that's known of, since there are a few repeat charges for a few of the babies. So to me, that's a lot more babies that ultimately survived than babies that died. So could it possibly be that she didn't want them to die? She just wanted them to collapse to the point she could be there and save them so she could get the praise and the feeling of greatness for being a hero? These are the things I was thinking at the beginning of the trial, before we got any information and in-depth details about the cases. And again, if you watched my first video on this, I did not hold back saying how I thought she was guilty, and how she did this. That's something I regret saying now. I'm brand new to YouTube and wasn't thinking of the permanence of my words. I failed in that aspect, but as I said, I'm going to get some shit wrong, but I would take that and I would learn from it so I would not repeat it next time. Since the start of the trial, and getting even more detail about each case individually, not just the general explanation of it from different media sources, but the actual cold hard facts from court, I'm starting to feel a little bit differently about Lucy. Each one of these babies had serious issues. Some serious, some not so serious, but nonetheless, they were in a neonatal unit for a reason. Some of the deaths don't seem like they could be her fault at all. Sure, if you looked hard enough and wanted to find something sinister at work, you could find it, and that would make her out to be a cold-blooded murderer. But after learning about Lucy, seeing her text, her notes, and things that she said to her colleagues, she does not come across as a cold-blooded murderer. I think if she is at fault in any way, maybe it was because she did not know what she was doing. Maybe she thought she knew what to do and how to treat these babies, but in fact she did not. Like the one baby that was alleged to have had a breathing tube shoved down his throat. Maybe she didn't intentionally try to hurt him, but she was actually trying to help him. She just did not know what she was doing, and she pushed it down a little too far, and it caused the issues. And all the allegations of her injecting air into the baby's stomachs. Maybe she was doing her feedings, and she didn't fully clear the line, and there was excess air in it. And since she didn't know, and it was such a small amount, I think I read in one of the reports it could take as little as a teaspoon of air to harm a baby that size. It was such a small amount, she didn't notice it, and she tried to feed them, and the air in the line caused the sudden collapses. I mean, if that's the case, then yes, she technically would still be at fault, but it would not be the way that they're pushing it, like she's a cold-blooded baby killer, but that she was just a young woman who just wasn't trained good enough for the things that she was doing and didn't know she was doing anything wrong, and she accidentally harmed these babies. That would fall into the negligent manslaughter maybe, but definitely not purposeful and calculated murder. Or a different thing I've been thinking since the beginning of the trial and the in-depth explanations about the babies and their deaths is that maybe Lucy is just a scapegoat. There were plenty of other nurses working in the ward at the time these things happened, and every time a collapse happened, there was at least one other nurse in the room or close enough to the room that they could see what was going on. As I said, I've spent a lot of time in neonatal units, and there's always multiple nurses around. They keep a pretty strict watch on those babies. They have sick and high-dependent babies that need constant care and monitoring. So for there to be enough time for someone to harm a baby these ways would be difficult. Nurses have to sign everything and document every move they make in a computer. So if Lucy was at the bedside of a baby she should not have been, it would have been very obvious. Another nurse would have known she was there and would have seen her doing things she wasn't supposed to be doing. I'd assume injecting anything into a baby would have been a noticeable act and another nurse would have seen it, especially if they were that baby's designated nurse and Lucy was not supposed to be around it. And I'm wondering why there was not cameras in the neonatal unit. Every single neonatal unit I've been to has had cameras in them, and the babies all have ankle monitors that tell you where the baby is at all times so no one can remove them without alarms going off. So maybe this is all a big cover-up, and the hospital is trying to push blame onto Lucy, so that way they're not responsible for the deaths, and so that they don't get sued. I would assume if a hospital was found to be at fault for lacking in the care of babies that ended up with the death of a lot of babies, they would be pretty screwed. For one, people would stop going there in fear of their babies dying, and then they'd be opening themselves to all kinds of lawsuits that would eventually put the place out of business. Any place of business that makes money on the level a hospital does would want to protect that any way possible. And what better way to protect themselves than to push all the blame onto a single person and use them as a scapegoat instead of accepting the blame and losing out on all that money. Those are just my thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and make this video about my opinions into a standalone video. That way people don't have to watch this entire thing about the case just to get to the opinions. And maybe if some people listen to that, it'll trigger them to think a little bit differently about all the details. Instead of them taking the mainstream media and listening to them, they'll look at it a little bit differently, and maybe they won't think Lucy is as guilty as I did when I first read the stories about her. I'm a parent, so it's really hard for me to wrap my head around how anyone could do this, let alone a woman who dedicated her life and had a long history of helping people and charitable actions. We will have to wait and see what happens at the trial. The trial's ongoing right now. It's said to take up to 6 months, so we're going to be waiting a while to see what they decide about Lucy. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking around. Please do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe if you would.